folks. So this is the brand new Garmin Forerunner 745 multi-sport watch, which sits right in between the mid-level Forerunner 245/645 and the flagship 945. And this device has been a long time coming, considering the watch that it replaces, the 735 XT, has been around for quite some time now, and the 745 completes the most current Forerunner lineup. So basically, in a nutshell, the 745, it's going to be great for folks out there who want all the features that are going to be found on the 945, but doesn't necessarily need maps or as long a battery life. And it still wants more advanced features like open water swimming, triathlon and multi-sport modes, as well as an altimeter that aren't found on the Forerunner 245. So I've been testing the 745 out for quite some time now, and I do have a lot of data to share in this in-depth review. So I tested it for as many activities as I could, just so you can get a better idea if this device is going to be right for you. So if you do find the information in this video useful, make sure to hit that like button down below, as it definitely helps the channel a lot, and I appreciate it. Oh, and the 745 isn't the only new fun thing that Garmin's released today. They've also released the HRM Pro, which is Garmin's most advanced heart rate strap to date, and it does a lot more than just collect accurate heart rate, but definitely check out that video once you're done over here, and I'll have that linked down in the description below. In terms of hardware, the 745 is just a tiny bit larger than the 245 and then just a little smaller than the 945. It's going to share the same Elevate heart rate sensor that's found on the 245 and the 945 that has the Pulse OX sensor that measures your blood oxygen levels. And even though the 745 is called a Forerunner, it actually does have some smartwatch features that we'll go over really quickly before going over the activities. For notifications, you'll be able to receive one-way notifications when it's paired to an iPhone. You'll be able to view text messages, and then you can also choose to answer or decline a call, but you can't speak on the watch itself. You'll still use your phone for the actual call. However, when you pair it with an Android device, you'll be able to reply to text messages using predefined responses that you can set up in Garmin Connect. The 745 also has offline music storage and playback through Amazon, Deezer, and Spotify, and then you can also load your own purchase tracks onto the watch itself. You'll also get contactless payments with Garmin Pay, and then you'll also be able to view calendar events as well as weather information when it's paired to your phone. For daily activity tracking, the 745 will track your heart rate 24 hours a day. It will track your steps, and then you can dive in and see your steps in graphical format for the last 12 hours, steps over the course of the last 7 days and your average per day, and then the distance over the last 7 days as well as your average. You'll also be able to see your daily calories with a breakdown of your active calories and then a chart of your calories burned for the last 7 days. You'll also be able to see your floors climbed, and yes, this is correct, as I did a hike this day, so that feeds into the data for the floors climbed, and then you'll also get sleep tracking with the 745. It'll show you how many hours you slept along with a sleep score and the quality of your sleep for that night. You can see a breakdown of your time spent awake in REM, light sleep, as well as deep sleep in a nice chart format, and then you can also see the time that you went to bed as well as woke up. There's also Garmin's Body Battery, which gives you an indication of energy levels, and this is based on the quality of your sleep as well as your energy expenditure throughout your day, and I actually find this to be pretty spot on to how I actually feel. And while we're on the topic of batteries, the 745 is advertised to get up to 16 hours of use for GPS activities, and that's going to be without music. And then it should last up to a week in smartwatch mode, so basically not using it for any GPS activities. So with my typical usage of using it for about an hour's worth of GPS activities per day on average, I was getting like 5 to 6 days out of it. For performance and training features, the 745 will be able to estimate your VO2 max for both running as well as cycling. So with running, this will be estimated using GPS and heart rate when you run outside for at least 10 minutes, and with cycling, you'll need heart rate along with a power meter like the Vector 3 pedals or a smart bike trainer. There's also going to be a race predictor that estimates times that you could potentially attain for some popular running distance. And then you'll also get training status, which gives an indication of where you're at in regards to your fitness and load, which you'll need to run outdoors or bike with a power meter for about a week before it'll show you a status. You can then see your VO2 max history over the last 7 days. You can see your 7-day training load, which gives you a recommended range of what it thinks is optimal. There's also a broader training load focus, which gives a breakdown of your effort over the last 4 weeks of your time spent in anaerobic, aerobic high, as well as aerobic low training loads, as well as what it thinks is optimal. Recovery time, and then you'll also get altitude and heat acclimation, which were introduced on some higher end devices but now are included on the 745. For activity profiles, the 745 comes with a ton, including a host of running profiles for both outdoors and indoors, cycling, both outdoors and indoors as well, pool swimming and open water swimming, triathlon and multi-sport modes, hiking, walking, snow sports, including skiing, snowboarding, backcountry skiing, and cross-country skiing, water sports, including stand-up paddleboarding, kayaking, and rowing, and then indoor profiles like indoor rowing, strength training, and just a bunch more. So let's go ahead and start this out with running. So the 745 lined up perfectly fine with the other test devices, and the total distance was pretty much right on, which results in a very similar average pace. And then the laps on each mile ticked off pretty much right at the same time as well. Cadence and stride length are also collected on the watch itself, which also lined up. But if you were to pair the 745 up with the HRM Pro, you can not only collect the most accurate heart rate, but you'll also get more advanced running dynamics such as your vertical ratio, vertical oscillation, ground contact time balance, ground contact time, as well as running power. In terms of the heart rate that the 745 collected on the wrist, over the course of this run, it was somewhat close to a couple external heart rate straps, but you can see that it did waver in some spots on the first half of the run where it tracked a little high. It then got in line with the other test devices, but then it did have a moment at the end where it tracked low for some reason. If we take a look at the actual GPS tracks in detail, the 745 did really well. In fact, if we take a look at the lower portion of this map, you can see that the 745 that's highlighted in orange was actually the most accurate in regards to staying on the same track as the path. When it comes to running indoors, it's important to go run outside first so the watch can learn your running dynamics like your cadence and your stride length and pair that along with GPS so the accelerometer can get a better idea of estimating those indoor running distances since there's no GPS available indoors. On this 5K run, the 745 was astoundingly close to the distance that was recorded on the treadmill. That's some pretty good stuff right there. And what is nice is that if for some reason the distance is off when you finish your run, you have the option of calibrating the distance to what was reported on the treadmill. For heart rate, the 745 tracked about 5 to 10 beats per minute high for the first 10 minutes of the run, but it wasn't way off by any means. But on the second half of the run, it was pretty much right in line with the other test devices, other than the slight wobble at the end. For cycling, let's go ahead and first check out a road ride. On this ride here, the 745 did extremely well in tracking the total distance. In fact, quite close to the other test devices, and the same can be said for elevation gain. And by the way, the screenshot in the middle shows Strava's corrected elevation figure, which corrects the elevation figure based on their map. So there's examples here of both barometric altimeters as well as elevation based off of mapping data. Heart rate for cycling can be a bit challenging, but the 745 did a pretty good job on this ride. You'll notice on this increase in heart rate that it dipped slightly and was a little bit slow to respond to catch back up, but after that it was tracking nicely. There were a few other spots where it was a little bit off, but for the most part, these are really good results. For mountain biking, it did really well for GPS accuracy. The total distance was incredibly close to the other test devices, and this was definitely a challenging test considering a lot of this ride was done in some dense tree cover in the mountains. If we take a close look at the GPS tracks, everything looks pretty solid. On some of the tighter switchbacks, it was matching up fine with the other test devices, and the only thing I could be maybe critical about would be one area on the left side of the map where it veered off just a little bit. But funny enough, all the devices varied, but it was in some dense tree cover on a steep slope. And then just like GPS, the elevation gain was rock solid and was incredibly close to the other test devices as well as GPS-based data. When it comes to heart rate for mountain biking is one of the most challenging activities for a wrist-based heart rate sensor to try to track accurately because there's a lot of wrist flexion and a lot of arm movement, especially when you're going downhill when the watch could be potentially bouncing around a lot. But this example is actually on the better side of things when it comes to heart rate for mountain biking. At the beginning, it veered off a bit for some reason as my heart rate increased, but it did lock back on for the first uphill portion of this ride. On the second half of this ride, this is where it started to drift off a little bit, and then as I was actually descending, this is where it veered off a little farther. But again, downhills are where most wrist-based heart rate sensors don't do well because the device can just bounce around a lot. Overall, for mountain biking, I'd almost always recommend a chest heart rate strap if you want to collect the most accurate heart rate data. For indoor cycling, the 745 can pair to speed and cadence sensors as well as smart trainers, so you'll be able to track speed, distance, cadence, and even power while riding inside. In addition, you'll be able to control your smart trainer where you can just free ride, you can follow a workout, you can follow a course, you can set a specific power, grade, or resistance, and then it can also offer workout suggestions, like in this case where it's suggested to do a low wattage based workout which is supposed to primarily have an aerobic training effect. When it came to heart rate for indoor cycling, it was pretty much perfect and had no issues throughout this entire ride. You really can't ask for much better than that. And one last thing with the 745 when it comes to cycling is that when you pair it with a power meter like the ones that are found on smart trainers, you'll be able to get your power numbers for the workout, including your normalized power. However, when you pair the 745 with a more advanced power meter like the Garmin Vector 3 pedals, which can collect more advanced cycling dynamics, you can collect a ton of data to work with like your left and right pedal balance, torque effectiveness, seated and standing position data, power phase data, and just a lot more. When it comes to strength training, the 745 comes with Garmin's strength training profile, which is designed to track your reps, weight, as well as attempt to automatically recognize the exercises that you're doing. For how this all works, when you go to start a strength training workout, you'll press the start key and then it'll start to track your reps. Once you're done with that set, you'll press the lap key to initiate a rest period. And then from here, you can edit the number of reps if they're off, but don't worry, you don't actually have to edit the reps right now. You can actually edit all this information later in Garmin Connect. You can also enter the weight for that particular set if you wish at this time, but don't worry, again, you can do this later in Garmin Connect, but after that, it'll go onto a rest screen. And then to initiate the next set, you'll just press the lap key again. And once you're done with your workout, it'll have all this information broken down in Garmin Connect. So when it comes to rep counting, it's okay for the most part, but I did find on some sets that for some reason, the rep counts were a little off. And then in regards to exercise recognition, it's gonna be kind of hit and miss. So it was able to identify all but the first set of bench presses I did at the beginning, but on the tricep extensions that followed it, it thought those were curls. On this back workout, you can see about the same degree of success, but again, just like I was mentioning earlier in terms of editing all this information, you can edit your reps, you can enter the weight, and then you can also edit the actual movement based on a huge list of exercises that are built into Garmin Connect. For heart rate, just like mountain biking, strength training is going to be another activity that's going to be notoriously challenging for any wrist-based heart rate sensor, just because, again, of all that wrist flexion and a lot of arm movement. There were portions on this workout where it was actually tracking pretty closely, especially at the end, but then it did have some issues in some other spots where it was tracking high. For pool swimming, the 745 can automatically trap laps and distance. You'll choose the pool length in the settings of the pool swimming profile, where you can choose from common pool lengths, and you can also set up a custom pool length if you wish. There's also options for a countdown timer, there's stroke detection, as well as a feature called auto rest, where it'll not only automatically track the pool lengths, but it'll also track when you stop to rest. And we'll see how well that actually works here in just 1 second. For the accuracy in regards to automatically tracking distance and the lengths, it did a really good job. The distance that you see on the left was using the automatic lap detection, and I was manually pressing the lap key with a device on the right. When it comes to the auto rest functionality that I referred to earlier, it takes a few seconds for the 745 to recognize that you're actually resting and then pops up a rest screen, but you'll see that it compensates for those few seconds, which is pretty cool. It'll also have your intervals as well as your rest time all broken down in Garmin Connect, and it has automatic stroke detection, which is also displayed right here. For heart rate, the 745 can track your heart rate in the water using its built-in wrist-based heart rate sensor, but you can also pair this up with a swim-capable heart rate strap like the HRM Pro or the HRM Swim to collect the most accurate heart rate data. However, I found the heart rate from the wrist to be fairly reliable. You can see here that the 745 did really well compared to the HRM Swim, where it tracked pretty closely for most of the swim. It tracked a little high and then a little low at the beginning of the swim, but the rest of the swim was very respectful, in fact, quite close. And then when you pair the 745 up with a swim-capable heart rate strap like the HRM Pro, what it'll do is when you go to save your session, it'll actually download the heart rate data that's going to be stored on the strap. So the 745 did a good job at tracking pretty much all the activities that I tested it for, and it's nice to see that it comes with a lot of features, and it clearly bridges the gap between the high-end 945 and the 245/645. I think a lot of people were wanting a little bit more than what was offered on the 245, such as an altimeter, but didn't necessarily want to pony up for the 945 and didn't necessarily need the maps or the longer battery life. And I think for all you all, the 745 is going to be right up your alley. Anyhow, now that you're done over here, make sure to check out the in-depth review I have on the HRM Pro, which also was released today. And if you found this video interesting or useful, make sure to hit that like button down below and also subscribe to the channel for plenty more in-depth sports tech reviews that are coming soon. In the meantime, have fun out there, and we will see you in the next video.